That would piss the New South Welshman off. If we had yellowfin mixed in with bluefin.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Deep Drop on what is 2 weeks away from our first big live event, which we are very, very pumped about. Luke McCredden here, and Adam Ring, as always, is with me. Ads, not far away, mate.
Not far away, and Luke, I'm not sure if it's nerves or excitement, maybe a little from column A and a little from column B, in particular because of a special announcement that was made during the week.
Well, we're talking about the Deep Drop and Wind Against Tide live podcast event, which is happening in a couple of weeks' time, 6th of July at Poker Face in Berwick. And Ads, that announcement that you refer to is exciting. It's going to be, we know it's going to be a lot of fun already, but we've added another band to the roster.
We have.
So obviously the Deep Drop, us and Win Against Tide will be doing their thing in a couple of different sets. We have a special guest who will be joining us at various stages throughout the night on stage in our shows. And that special guest, Adam, is Lee Rayner.
Lee Rayner, that's exciting. He brings a lot to the table. Obviously well-versed in the areas of fishing. Has done a lot of media and presenting stuff, so I dare say well-versed in the art of talking shit too. So I think he will slot in perfectly with what we have to offer on the night, which is going to be loads of fun.
Well-versed is probably an understatement, let's be honest. I'm not sure there's probably not many people who you could talk to anywhere in this country that has more sort of fishing information that just oozes out of them when they just speak. In fact, I'd argue Lee doesn't know anything about anything else.
Well, it's a fair point you raise, Luke, and it might be something that we try and pry out of him on the night. But what I'm most excited for by Lee joining us is, Luke, we make no secret. Let's say we're fairly transparent with the fact that we don't always know what we're talking about.
Oh,
so
that's unfair.
We're happy to spitball and throw some ideas out there, and some stuff sticks and some stuff falls pretty short. I think with the experience that Lee's got in the fishing game all around Australia and the world, we may be able to get some really solid answers to some questions that we've already asked on previous podcasts solely out of his experience. So I think that's going to be exciting because not only do you get the entertainment factor, but I dare say you'll probably learn something too.
You can't not be around that guy and not learn something. That's what I've found in my time hanging around with him. And the other thing too, he's going to join the Deep Drop on stage at some point too. So I'm looking forward to, I'm hoping that, and if it doesn't come up, I'm going to prompt it, but I'm hoping that he and Dave can get into a bit of a convo about some of the offshore fishing that the two of them collectively have done over the years, which is phenomenal. And again, without even having to ask any questions, the information that will come out of Lee alone, but and you include Dave Standing into the mix, if you want to talk about Bluewater fishing, like far out, I'm going to have the ears tuned when they start talking, let me tell you.
Yeah, well, I'll be sitting down with a cold frothy and I'll be paying attention with a notepad and pen, just taking down any pointers because there'll be those tiny little bits of information. There'll also be the obvious things that you just don't think of.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a very welcome addition to both shows on the night, Luke, and it's just made an even more exciting prospect.
Well,
a little bit, given a little bit extra.
Yeah, and we've spoken about the fact that we're really excited about being able to have a beer or two with you guys out there, the listeners, and so much of what we do is, very much inspired from the interaction we get from our listeners' ads on this show. And I know Dave feels the same and Joey with Win Against Tide. So the idea to be able to actually be in the same room and have a chat, obviously be recording the show, but even once we finish, we'll be hanging around. So I'm looking forward to catching up. But the fact is, Lee's going to be there too. So if you're interested in just picking his brain, he's going to be hanging around for a while. So
yep, definitely.
Pour yourself a beer. Well, not pour yourself a beer. Grab a beer from the bar and buckle up, because once you start talking to Lee about fishing, it's just you just learn without even realising you're learning.
Yep, it's going to be huge.
It's going to be
very
good.
Excited.
It's going to be good, mate. We've got a show to do, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, anyone who tuned into the last episode may have heard us talking about. We had a great listener or a question from Instagram. Actually, it was, I think, Adam, about carp and
Yep.
in particular ways to assist in removing them from the system, so to speak. And there were a couple of options. I suppose after all was said and done in last week's show, we were left with a couple of options. I mean, I was well and truly just one-sided on that, and the campaign of Carpathon 24 was well into swing once we hit the stop button on the recording devices. But then obviously the carp bounty piece was there too.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, which was more around, I suppose getting, money back from...
Yeah, some sort of compensation for removing carp from the system.
So without going right back into that whole conversation, firstly, thank you so much for the question that prompted that conversation. But secondly, thanks everyone for the feedback that we got from that episode. We got so many private messages on Instagram. I had some text messages from people that I know that I didn't even realize listen to the show, with all sorts of different feelings on it. And obviously there was some real support for Carpathon, the Carpathon Carnival all the way. Just looking at Instagram now. John Didge, good friend from down the Ballerine here, he was in favour of the bounty. He said he's always said it, put some value on carp to help eradicate them. And it makes sense.
Does make sense, yep.
Now, I don't want to overcommit to what I'm about to say, Ads, but we've been heard. We've been heard. The VFA... the VFA... I'm not overstepping the line here. I'm not going into any detail. There's no
detail to give out yet.
No, there's nothing. No, that's right. But they heard our call. We've had some casual conversation, but let me tell you, they're not against any of those that feedback from any of the people from Instagram and from the question on the actual podcast and our ideas ads. I'm just saying they're good. They're smart people down there at the VFA.
I would love nothing more than to be wearing a Carpathon 24 t-shirt with a Deep Drop logo on the sleeve, representing the Deep Drop at the very first inaugural Carpathon.
Oh, mate.
It would be unreal.
And without getting too over the top about it, I'm picturing a big stage, probably bands. There'll be music, live music. Obviously, we'll be there doing the Deep Drop, but I'm thinking, I don't know, Jimmy Barnes.
Luke, once the ideas get rolling, shit starts to get out of hand. I'm pretty sure even before recording this episode that you're listening to out there right now, we even floated the idea of purging carp for 48 hours and turning them into carp nuggets and having a competition to see how much sauce you need before a carp's edible. So realistically, the options are endless.
And we're open to partnerships. Like you mentioned nuggets. I'm open for McDonald's to get involved.
Hey, I'll put them. If we have to go McDonald's tempura batter over a carp nugget, I'm in. Rosella tomato sauce. If you want to sling us a couple of tons of sauce, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. I'm open to everything.
I will say though, I'm all about royalty. So if I see McCarp on the next McDonald's menu,
that's a game changer.
Mate, I want a piece of that because, but hey, so, let's keep this thing rolling. We're not going to get too bogged down in it tonight, but let's keep this train rolling because...
Yeah, keep the thoughts coming on Carpathon. Actually, send your ideas on what would make an awesome Carpathon event. What do you want to see?
Do you know what I'm thinking? I know I said live music before. I'm picturing like Big Day Out. It's just a resurgence of Big Day Out on the bank of a river.
Can we have an American-style bass weigh-in where there's like bogans rolling up with their two biggest carp, like just hanging off each hand, massive Carpathon trophies?
Oh, Rod Laver Arena or straight to the MCG, or what do you want to do?
Oh, well, Rod Laver's not going to cut it. I think we're going to have to go straight to the G. Yeah. And even then, you'd want to get in early for tickets, I think, because you'd get 100,000 of that, wouldn't you?
And parking can be a bitch, so we'll have to work something out there.
Oh, it's public transport. If Public Transport Victoria want to jump on board, there's a spot there for you.
There you go. See, that's what I'm saying. We're relationship building. We're all about partnerships here, Ads. Oh, this is going to be huge. We may have taken it too far. VFA now thinking you guys are idiots.
Yeah,
we're off. Nah, the sky's the limit. I like this sky's the limit approach. Anyway.
It's what it's all about. Fuck.
Don't stop. If you've got some ideas, like seriously, some of the stuff that was coming through, because there's instant I'm getting back into it again because it excites me.
Yeah,
But
just
like,
send us your ideas and we'll keep you updated at the start of every episode.
yeah,
How's
we're
that?
listing it out. We're listing it out.
I love it.
Oh, how good's that? Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Hey,
Just changing the game.
Speaking of entrepreneurs, I watched. I haven't finished it. I only saw the start of it. It was late one night. Have you seen? There's a doco. Well, it's a film called Air. It's about
I haven't seen it. I know what. Yeah, it's about the Jordan shoes, isn't it?
Yeah. I was on, and I just literally watched probably 5-10 minutes of it, but I'm going to get stuck into it. But it made me think about something that I've thought about for a little while, and this is a very localized type project as far as Australia and the Australian market. But because I love documentary style, whether biopics, whether actual film or whatever it is, but I love hearing true stories and just, especially when it's behind the scenes type stuff and you get a bit of an insight into things that you say, oh, is that how that came about or whatever? Is it too much? Is it too much of a big call or out there call to say, I think we're ready for some documentary style movies, or might be 3-part type things on YouTube or something, on some of the things that have happened in the Australian recreational fishing industry, tackle industry over the years. Like, I'm intrigued with just, and I know we're sort of, we're right in the mix, so we kind of hear about all some of these stuff, and it's exciting. But that's why I'm thinking the broader public would be really interested in hearing, like, the backstory of squidgies always comes to mind, for example, because it didn't just pop up overnight. There's a whole story about it.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, do you think there's anything in that, or even just the development of when certain things hit the Australian market and it's game changing? We've spoken about game changing products, just recently, I think, in an episode, things like braid or the electronics that are out there now. I think there's enough now legacy sort of development that we could almost get a bit of a insight into it and there's some great filmmakers out there in the fishing and marine space. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
It would be really interesting, and I wonder what. So let's just take the example that you've already listed. So say squidgies. It would be interesting to us. We saw it explode in the Victorian market, but how did that translate to the rest of the country? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because for a long time, they, no one knew what soft plastics were, but they knew what squidgies were. It's like the brand Esky. That's kind of what it was for soft plastics. And I know that there's some huge, like, worldwide brands of soft plastic that are never going anywhere, that are just as competitive. But squidgy was kind of special because it was developed for the Australian market. All the promo material was based around Australian fish. I still remember watching those squidgy DVDs where it was filmed at Malakuta, and then there was stuff done up the south coast on the Kings, and so it's interesting. I wonder what other avenue you could go down to push that story. I mean, one of the other huge revelations that we saw was, basically the arrival of squid jigs, where they went from $3 for $10 in a dump in to upwards of $30 to $40 per jig.
Yep.
And I would argue more have been sold at that price point than $3 for $10.
And maybe this, I would agree. And maybe this is my inner sort of fishing tackle nerd coming out, but even the process of that obviously that filtered in from the Japanese market or wherever, but where was that kickoff here? Like, and who was it? And, I just think, maybe maybe the majority of people out there would be going, that sounds boring and dull. But I just feel like there's enough sort of tackle junkies out there that would be like, yeah, that would be kind of cool to see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it legitimately started. Like I said, we saw it start in our little patch here in Victoria, which even compared to Australia is a tiny market. You compare Victorian recreational fishing tackle sales compared to, say, New South Wales, Queensland, it just doesn't compete.
But even when you think about that, what you just said, it was developed by a couple of people from New South Wales, so they had to have kicked off there, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I would argue, having just said that Victoria is probably, as far as total tackle sold, down in, back in the pack, I can almost guarantee that more squid jigs have gone into Victoria than every other state combined.
Yeah, for sure.
I would almost put money on it. That's
Yeah.
where jigs really took off in Victoria. There was pockets in Western Australia that did really well. There's been pockets in New South Wales that have done really well. But I don't think it's anything compared to South Australia. They've got their
South
own
Australia
little squid fishery as well. But in Victoria, it became an industry within an industry. Squid fishing was and is massive.
Well, it became its own category, which
it did.
Before that sort of big uptake wasn't. It was just...
No, it's just something you could do.
Yeah, and it was something that people always did. Like, I remember doing it as a kid, but it was kind of... Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a...
Let's throw a squid jig out and see what happens.
Yeah, while you're doing something else,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it'd be cool to get that documented, while we're... Because I feel like we're at the point now where there's... Like I said, there is history now. So it's not, young enough that it would only happen a couple of years ago. There's a fair bit of history in the Australian market. Obviously, globally, there's huge history, but let's keep it local. I think there'd be there's some really cool stories to be told. I think about some of the, some of the pioneers in that retail space with some of the guys who kicked off some of the complete angler tackle world. Like some of that sort of. There's some players in that space that changed the game.
Yeah, and have seen some unbelievable evolutions in stuff. And obviously there's been crazy evolution in the quality of fishing tackle and even the accessibility in fishing tackle. I think a lot of people out there would be really shocked to see where everything started. Even take some of the biggest brands in the world like Shimano, how that started in Australia. It started off as a tiny agent.
Yep.
Just bringing in a handful of reels to, fast forward however many years into the juggernaut that it is now.
Yeah, I'm actually only recently was having a chat to my dad, and he was talking about fishing in probably early 80s, New South Wales, South Coast, obviously a bit down here in Victoria, but it was very much Abu reels.
Yeah.
And Shimano were kind of the cheap option and not much of a range, and there was, Penn Internationals were the game reel.
Yep.
The Abu sort of those little overheads and stuff like that were kind of the next step, and then there were obviously Shimano was a player and whatever, but yeah, it's changed so much. And don't get me wrong, Penn and Abu, all these brands are still big, and in fact have probably gotten back to being big brands again now as far in that reel space. But yeah, it's a completely different world. Like, Dad looks at a catalog or even probably my collection of reels and goes, what are you doing? Like, what is all this? But I don't know. Maybe it's not for everyone, but I think it'd be kind of cool, and I reckon there would be certainly a selection of people who'd be nerding out about that stuff.
Yeah, it'd be a really niche. It'd be a really niche market. But I think for the people interested, it could be quite an eye-opening. An eye-opening watch for whatever it was, whether it was just... You could make a whole series just on the rise and fall of the trends. It doesn't need to be brand-specific, whether it be from, the whole brim scene had its day, which then transitioned into a cod scene, which we're in at the moment. We had the game fishing, the mecca of, the 80s and 90s of marlin and, yellowfin tuna at Bermagui, and which all those fisheries are still healthy, but they've had these big ebbs and flows depending on seasonal and tackle and people being able to travel and everything. There's so much that you could do just covering the cycles of what we do as anglers in Australia.
Hey, thinking about that, you sort of touched on something there that prompted me to think this. Look, you obviously are on the road a bit for work. You head up to New South Wales, that South Coast quite a bit. When I was younger, and I'm curious to know if there's any sort, and maybe people listening might be able to get involved here too. And I'm not trying to make this a war. When I was younger, it was all like New South Wales was the place where if you wanted that offshore fishing, or even some of the inshore for kingfish and snapper and whatever, but especially tuna, marlin, all that sort of thing was very much New South Wales. There's nothing here, like realistically. But all of a sudden, in the last 5 years, let's call it, and probably more, but there's no need to go anywhere as a Victorian. It's all here now, like with the exception of probably marlin fishing, which I know a few people have done out of lakes and Malakuta and whatever. But realistically, like you'd still hit Burmie and that if you want to go somewhere close enough without having to travel too far. But as far as tuna, especially things like kingfish and the tuna, obviously, is there any sort of vibe that you get from either whether it's tackle stores or the people that you come across up there? And again, I'm opening this up to the listeners as well. That there's kind of there is that it's been taken away from them a little bit, or it's like it's not the same vibe as it was because there's not as many Victorians going up there for those things, or am I overthinking that a little bit?
It's an interesting one because I think when we first had a couple of biggish seasons on kingfish, which was quite a few years ago now, it'd have to be near 10 years ago. Time goes so fast.
Yeah.
I remember being at the Mornington store at the time. We had 2 years in a row because I remember the months that they happened. There was 1 year, February was just unreal. And then the year after, it didn't happen till March. And I'm talking where the kingfish went nuts. You've got 300 plus boats in the Rip. That was when no one was going offshore yet, or that there was the percentage of people going offshore wasn't as great as what it was for people fishing in the Rip. For whatever reason, those fish came in great numbers. They schooled up inside the heads itself, and that seemed to be where the majority of the fish were caught. At around that time, there was a little bit of, hey, what's going on down in Victoria? Because those kingfish seasons were quite lean on the south coast of New South Wales. But I think what's happened since then, we share the same inconsistency on kingfish. I still think you're, by all accounts, somewhere like Narooma with Montague Island there, that's a far more reliable place to go and get kingfish than it would be fishing, say, in the Rip or even out in Bass Strait, out from Port Phillip or Western Port, doesn't really matter. But I think at the moment, both areas share the same inconsistencies because we've seen that huge in the Victorian fishery for kingfish over the last couple of years. They turn up. I can guarantee you, since those 2 boom years where we had 1 February, 1 March, kingfish have been here successfully every single year since.
Yeah.
But I think we learnt as Victorians how truly unbelievable these fish are. They are the most aggressive and most frustrating fish of all time. Because for something that's renowned to be so unbelievably aggressive, they can be so unbelievably shy.
Yeah. I think there's another element to it that I think has been awesome here, and that is that more anglers are trying new things and new techniques because they can do it literally, a stone's throw from home without having to put a whole trip behind it. Like as recent as a couple of months ago, we talk about Lee Rayner coming on a live show. He's catching fish the top end of Western Port over a metre.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that's been relatively new. It's only been the last 2 years where we've had this exceptional class of fish actually sit in Western Port proper. It's not offshore.
No.
It's in Western Port. And that's why these fish are so amazing and they're so confusing. I mean, why all of a sudden for 2 years? Because it prompts you to ask all these questions, like, have those fish been there since the start? We just haven't looked. Listen, Western Port's one of the most used waterways for recreational fishing in the state. I'm sure someone would have noticed meter kingfish stacked up on one of the buoys in the western entrance. I'm sure they would have found them. A gummy fisherman would have found them by accident.
I was going to say you'd also get one on a squid strip or something, fishing for snapper or gummies. You would. That's as simple as that. Like if they were thick and you put out a nice fresh strip of squid, they're going to eat it. Yeah. So you're right. We would have thought they'd be stumbled upon by now.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, they would have. I had no doubt in my mind.
So your point is that there's certainly fair rhyme and reason to say that they're arriving in bigger and stronger numbers in places they haven't otherwise been.
Oh, we are definitely getting a higher spillover of fish. I still think the premier yellowtail kingfish fishery belongs to New South Wales. I think they have a longer season. They have a more consistent season, but this is the thing. Their fishery depends solely on current.
But you're probably talking more specifically the southern part of New South Wales, because you go up the central and northern coast, and you're talking sort of September is their optimum kingfish time, and it's completely different beast. So, but yeah, in that southern part, that's almost the North Victoria. Is
I dare you to tell them that.
Well, this is kind of what I was getting at, though. Like, is there a, and again, this isn't like, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but is there almost a jealousy factor that's come in now because we don't need to go there for kingfish or for tuna. Like seriously, like they're fucking everywhere in Victoria, like masses of them.
Yeah.
And I just think there's always been this sort of, well, if you want that sort of fish, then you got to come here, and rightly so, because that's kind of what it was for long time, but all of a sudden, when we talk about why there hasn't been as many boats offshore in Victoria, I think it's just because all of a sudden people now are going, well, I can do it. There's some people have led by example, and we're able to have the knowledge and skill set we need now to be able to do it. And I just wonder if there's any form of, you bastards.
Oh, for maybe for the locals up there, but I don't really know, because I'd love to know actually what would be the percentage of game fishermen that live on the south coast of New South Wales. How many of them are coming into Victoria to chase big bluefin?
Do you reckon their pride would let them come to Victoria?
I don't know. I think when it comes to big fish, because they do have a big bluefin fishery. The problem is it's so far offshore. If the current doesn't push in far enough, those fish won't be there.
And if they do come in, it's very small windows. We saw those big bluefin in when I say close proximity, I think it was inside the shelf a few years back. But yeah, I don't know. I just and remember a lot of and I don't want this to sound like I'm being ageist, but a lot of the old school game fishers have the Bertrams and the Blackwatchers moored up there. So it's not as if you can just chuck what we know now is some very popular,
it's really
big boat that are trailerable now.
Well, it's really weird because I think one species of fish could completely change the game again, to the point where I think if it happened, no one would give a shit about game fishing in Victoria. If those big yellowfin turned up on the south coast of New South Wales, and I'm not even talking back in the old days, I'm talking 15 years ago.
Yep.
When there was a legitimate yellowfin season where there would be hordes of boats leaving anywhere on that south coast, whether it be Eden or Bermagui, Narooma, all up and down, where you're basically trolling around. You're trolling on your way out to the cubing grounds.
I was going to say, you've got 100 kilos of pilchards.
Exactly. And so you're towing a few lures out till you get to the shelf.
Yep.
Picking up a few small yellowfin doing that, then cubing up a storm and picking which yellowfin. If they turned up in the numbers that they were in here 15 years ago, I think it changes everything. You watch how quickly people forget about bluefin.
Yeah. I mean, no, I totally agree. I think if they rocked up, that's almost the one you tip your hat to and say, they're here, we're going.
Yep.
I don't reckon it's a forget.
Oh no, it wouldn't. Yeah,
fishery.
sorry, that's probably a bit aggressive.
I totally.
No, but
it's a bit aggressive from you on a Tuesday night.
But those fishermen that are fishing for, say, school bluefin out the front, they're not interested anymore. They're going up the coast and they're fishing for yellowfin.
Yeah. Hell yeah, yep.
Because we saw that fishery change even in Victoria itself.
And there is still a major's not the right word, a big number of people that go up marlin fishing still on that south coast. Like, I'm not saying it's taken everything away from it. I'm just curious as to whether, being sort of the only or the nearest place we could go game fishing, so to speak, blue water fishing, all of a sudden it's not, like, because they're literally all along our Victorian coastline.
Yeah.
But, gee, yellowfin, imagine they bypassed New South Wales and came straight into Bass Strait.
That would piss the New South Welshmen off. I guarantee it. If we had yellowfin mixed in with bluefin, well, actually, no, the season, like the summer was just loaded with yellowfin, and then it slowly trickled. We had those few months of the year where there was a mixture of both, and then it tailed off into bluefin only. You know what? And just because I'm going to make a really bold statement, and this is because obviously there's reports out about the next couple of years of our offshore fishery being potentially really good because of the El Nino or whichever one we're
it
up
is.
to. Yeah,
like mahi, we've seen them off Portland many times. Like, if we're getting this huge, beautiful blue water push right through the strait, there's no reason we couldn't potentially have some mahi coming through. And what if some yellowfin follow a trail down or wherever they're coming from? Like, if it's as good as they're saying it's going to be, like, and they're talking about the kingfish fishing for the next couple of years could be unbelievable. The tuna fishing could stay as good as it's been. And and like I said, I if the water's nice and it's got the right temperature and full of the nutrients and the bait that it needs, then, like, if there's dolphin fish at Portland, which still always sort of baffles me, but there are, and they get picked up from time to time, don't they? Why wouldn't they keep coming?
Well, that's an interesting, because what would that do to the bluefin fishing in Vic? Because if you have a look at the bulk of the really good bluefin fishing in Bass Strait, it's been when we've had La Nina, the cold one, whatever the hell that one's called.
Yeah, whatever her name is.
If we go back to the warm one, does that mean we get stronger kingfish than we do bluefin?
Yeah, maybe. Or is it just smaller bluefin? You know, I think typically we, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of the bigger jumbo-sized fish, the colder water currents that come through? Or am I completely wrong? I feel like during...
I don't know. It definitely seems
during
to be...
summer there were some big fish as well. I don't know.
I think it must just be a migrational thing, like a seasonal thing.
That's a good point.
I don't really know.
If that water changes, even though we might be saying it's going to be great, if it changes sort of dramatically, it potentially could affect what we do have already as far as bluefin.
Because it seems to be a bit of a trade-off. In those few years where the kingfish seasons were really good, there was bluefin around, but they were nowhere near the numbers they're in now.
Do you remember, and I'm going to say 15 years ago because time's flying, the striped tuna...
Yes!
I won't say plague, but there were masses of them.
Well, there was a plague, and it was only for 1 year.
It was 1 year.
Yep, 1 year. So, there was a few caught this season after, mate, but there was 1 year. That's weird. Yeah. That's as weird to me as anything, because it's one of the few species we've had that boomed, like went hard as hell, and didn't hang around. They didn't come back.
I remember stumbling across them casting at what we thought was a school of salmon just outside Point Lonsdale and going, oh, what?
Yeah, it's weird.
And then, but then that sort of disappeared as soon as it, felt like as soon as it arrived.
It never happened again.
And I'd love to know, like I genuinely, if anyone's listening that have picked one up and amongst the bluefin over the last sort of 2, 3, 5 years or whatever, let us know. But I purely just for curiosity's sake.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard anything like that. And I wonder whether that was, if you could turn back time or have a look at a diary if someone's got it to see what was happening then. What pattern we saw it in. Because it was We've spoken about fishing diaries ads. I knew I should have kept one.
Nah, fuck them.
Anyway, there's a lot to unpack there, but I mean, it's a great spot we're in at the moment. So there's nothing to complain about as far as our fishery goes. We just need to keep doing the right thing.
Well, I think that's one of the great things about the offshore fishery that we've had in Victoria. It's actually got people venturing out offshore. I mean, Luke, you and I used to talk about this at no end, and this is before there was kingfish, this is before there was bluefin. We always thought that Bass Strait was an underutilised fishery. I mean, there's been a fleet of charter boats that have been working the snapper grounds and that out there. It actually baffles me that there's been no recreational interest really in doing it. I mean, the prime time for snapper offshore is, like, it's actually quite reliable now.
now. It's funny, isn't it? Because people have got the ability now and the confidence and the experience where they've been out doing it on tuna. They pick the right day and head out there now just soaking some baits on some of those offshore reefs or rubble grounds and whatever it is. I still do think it's an underutilised fishery, ads, and I'm not talking about the fashionable kingfish and tuna species, but I'm talking about big flathead, really nice snapper, gummies, you know, like table fish.
Yeah, because gummies got a little bit of love a few years ago with, again, a couple of charter boats doing some quality drifts and getting multiple, like 10 kilo plus fish.
People that I know that do it regularly rarely miss, if at all, and they are solid fish.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, and like I said, if you go out there and confidently this time, or probably throughout the year, but there's probably peaks, but get a really good bag of flathead and pinkies, and there's some bigger snapper around, as you said, right now. It's a good time to do it. But so in that sense, it probably is still a bit of an underutilised fishery.
Yeah, you're right. And which ties into another topic that we've discussed on previous things. Do you think micro jigging and things like that could have been heaps bigger if people were willing to go out offshore? Because you can use those, you know, those 30 to 60 gram jigs that you see in every tackle shop. We do have the water. That 40 metres of water, 60 metres of water, that's actually perfect for those size jigs, whereas it's probably a little bit heavy for how shallow the bay proper is.
Yeah.
But offshore,
Mate,
it's perfect.
I reckon it's spot on. And we've done it together. We've done that. We've spent some time out there mucking around with it. But I think it's, and I think now I'd love to know if anyone's going out there now and having a crack. I'd love to come with, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. Sign me up.
Give us a yell. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, it's an interesting one.
Well, so the other interesting thing, getting back onto bluefin, it's funny how things develop, because the last few years in particular, so we've had bluefin at Portland and Warrnambool for let's just say as long as, you know, we can remember. Obviously, it's a fishery that I can remember when it started, realistically, but it's been a big thing for quite a long time.
Yep.
Yet I feel as though catching them on top water is something that didn't take off until they turned up locally. Why?
Yep. I don't know. I had a smart ass comment, but I wasn't. It was going to be something around, because you can't stand on the deck of a fucking boat in 8 metre seas and 40 knot winds off Portland.
Do you know what, though?
Casting.
No, that's not smart ass. I didn't think of it. It's actually a fair answer. It's a fair answer, because a shit day in, like an average day in Port Phillip Bay is 2 metre swell with a bit of shit, which it's uncomfortable, but you can do it. But an average day at Portland's 4 metres.
Oh, it's mad! It's mad. I can't believe. And
it's actually a great answer.
I didn't fish. I haven't fished down there as much as a lot of people listening to this, and maybe even you. But I've done enough trips down there to know that it never gets calm.
Oh, do you know what? I am the luckiest bastard when it comes to Portland, because I haven't fished there a lot by no means, but I reckon half of the trips I've done there have been that calm that you can walk on the water out there. Like, there was one trip, it was that calm.
You weren't at Portland, mate. You were in Western Port.
It was that calm. We were catching small bluefin, like 6 kilo, 8 kilo bluefin on 3,000 size reels and 6 kilo rods.
I remember,
because it was that calm.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I've been there when it's shit, and you can fucking have it.
You can absolutely have it. I'm not interested. No, I'll wait in the car park. Thanks.
Yeah. But it's funny. It's funny because the topwater thing caught on massively locally.
Yeah.
But I'd never say people were buying poppers and stick baits in the droves like they were in Victoria to take out west at the height of the bluefin thing.
I feel like there's a few elements to that, and purely just my opinions, and it could be completely wrong, but there's a part of that there's a balance of effort. Like, and I think if you are doing 60 nautical, you're going out 60 mile or whatever it is to catch a bluefin, at Portland or whatever it is, you just want to catch one. And you know that if you troll around a couple of lures, you're going to hook, you're going to get one. Whereas if you're casting plastics, top water, stick baits, poppers, whatever it is, you're kind of flirting with missing out a bit more. But you're balancing that by saying, yeah, but if I hook up, it's going to be fucking amazing. But out there, you're just like, all I want to do is catch a fish and come home because it's, you know what I mean? It's such an effort. Yeah. Whereas here, you're not doing the miles. I mean, like I think I said to you recently on the show, like the last trip out there, I think we were catching tuna in 15 metres of water or something off the back of, Bowen Heads or something like that. And I'm like, you're sort of going out there and there's obviously plenty of fish still, but you're not, when you catch one, you haven't been on the water for 3 hours just trying to get out there. You've been able to duck out, get a couple of fish. So you're more inclined then to go, let's have a bit of fun. Let's chuck some lures around. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense, sort of?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. But I think it's weird because I feel as though in Victoria, you were actually a better chance at catching a fish casting a topwater lure than you were towing lures around all day. Whereas, like you said, I think Portland, you're 100% spot on. And you can, if you just put a spread of lures out and drive around long enough, chances are you're going to hook one. That doesn't really seem like the case in Bass Strait. You get, especially the last 2 seasons, you could make a case, especially early in the season, you were a better chance at getting a fish casting lures at them than you were trolling around for 8 hours.
Yeah, and that happened, didn't it? There were examples of that, and that's a really good point. So, I mean, and potentially that could have been the case at Portland too, but it was just, I don't know. I just think there's an element there where it's just like, it's almost too hard. Like, it's very doable, but it's like, as you said, you had some nice glass out days as well, where I'm sure you could have done it, but
I think the fish are different. They're different here.
Yeah.
Fish aren't the same. When they're out of their comfort zone, they're not the same. The bluefin don't have the depth of water to play with, so they're on edge, which kind of makes sense because the guys towing lures around are typically dragging lures on the smaller side from 100 to 120 mil, 150 mil, whereas the popper thing kind of makes sense in the fact, even with a shy school of fish around, you are capable of getting 1 or 2 reaction bites and hookups, which you're going to get with something aggressive like a popper than you are, you know what I mean? You're not getting a reaction bite out of dragging a 3-inch skirt around for 10 days.
And one or 2 bites is all you're sort of needing.
Yeah, exactly.
In those situations.
And because the fish would let us see them, you could hop around from school to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing.
It is, and I'm looking forward to seeing what does happen in the next couple of sort of summers, I suppose. But one of the things, actually, just on that, just to round out that convo, I'm thinking if it's a really healthy sort of summer period where the water's really beautiful condition, I would dare say it's not a bad time to chase a mako if you're that way inclined.
Yeah, well, see, that's another fishery that used to be huge. It used to be a season of its own. I genuinely believe I don't think there's as many sharks out there as what there used to be.
Very cool.
Because there is still people doing it. I guess they are still catching. It's interesting. But you know what, Luke? There is one person that could answer all of these questions that we've been talking about a hell of a lot better than us, and that's Lee Rayner, who will be joining us live. So
what a segue.
We might have to. Because he's done all of this.
He's done all of that.
He's caught bluefin on top water out here. He's caught makos in the past. He's caught kingfish out here. He's done the Portland thing. It would be interesting to hear his thoughts. Yeah. Someone who's done all of it, because I haven't done enough of it.
And someone and you could also, and we might pose this to him on the night, someone who has spent so many years and so much time on the water fishing out of Bermagui, Eden, Narooma. Be interesting to hear his take on, that compared to what we've got here and vice versa, and see where he sits with that too. So we might throw that one at him. Hey, just on that too, now we're talking about the live show, 6th of July, a couple of weeks' time. It's a Thursday night, kicks off at 7. Tickets are available. We probably didn't really talk about that off the top of the show. There's still tickets available. Go to trybooking.com, search the Deep Drop. You'll see all the info about the show, and obviously you can buy tickets there, or on our Instagram page is a link to that, and I think there's probably a link on the Wind Against Tide Instagram and Facebook pages as well. But yeah, if you guys out there are coming along or thinking about coming along, don't feel like that you can't be part of this show, Because if you got something you think would be a good question for Lee, like put that up your sleeve and come along and let us know.
Definitely.
Because you guys, this is your show. This is your show, and we want to incorporate you guys. And I think it's going to be a blast. So 6th of July, a couple of weeks time from now, ads. It's a Thursday night, 7 p.m. It kicks off. We're putting on some pizzas.
Yep.
So you won't go hungry, and there's a bar there. You'll be able to
beers over the bar.
Yeah, we're not buying the beers. Sorry about that. You're going to have to buy them yourself.
Any beer sponsors out there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're a liquor company, let us know. So it's going to be good. Nice, relaxed atmosphere. Have a couple of drinks, have a bit of a laugh, and let's talk fishing, eh?
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Until then, we'll be with you next week, and then it's showtime. Oh, my God. We're going to do an episode next week, and then it's basically showtime ads.
We better start planning something, eh?
Shit. What am I? Yeah. What are you wearing?
Oh, mate, you know what I'm wearing.
I do.
I'm rocking a tournament shirt, baby.
Oh,
and I encourage everybody to turn up on the night, Thursday night, the 6th of July. Just wear your tournament shirts with pride, and we can all be outrageously embarrassing together.
All right, let's do it. We'll see you there. Trybooking.com. Search the Deep Drop. Buy your tickets. We will see you there. Cannot wait.